Hello and welcome to the Kent Voices podcast with me, your host, Charlie Gurr. This week in November marks United Nations International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. So I've invited Becky and Filipa from Student Support and Wellbeing, who are behind the university's Sex Positive Consent campaign. Consent, get it, full stop. I was also joined by Charlotte and Megan from the community action group Respect the No, who do great work on spreading awareness of sexual violence and assault and fostering a safer, happier campus. I've had a great time talking to them about healthy relationships, sex, and coming into university. We talked about so much, from the intimidating idea that everyone at universities had sex all the time, to certain things we learn in sex education about sex, pleasure, and relationships that turn out not to be accurate. They've shared their own experiences and advice, and quite a few hilarious stories. We all hope that you enjoy this episode and that it provides some peace for thought. You might just learn about the initiatives and support at the University of Kent that you weren't aware of. So, without further ado, let's get on with the podcast. Hello, so Becky and Filipa are from the Student Support and Wellbeing at the university. Becky is the Specialist Wellbeing Advisor and Filipa is the Campaign and Project Assistant. Becky and Filipa are currently working on a sex positive campaign on consent for the university. Hello, how are you doing?
Hi. Hello.
And I'm also joined by Megan and Charlotte, who are from the community action group Respect the No. Hello, how are you doing?
Hiya,
Hi.
I'm good.
So the first thing we'll be talking about is having sex for the first time, what kind of pressures there might have been, what expectations you might have had. Maybe there were some preconceptions. Does anyone want to start with their first point?
I'll go. So one thing that I found in like is sort of a memory from my secondary school days is like that's when things started to really, kick off and pick up a bit. That's when the conversation about sex and how it was like such a big thing that you were going to have to start having soon, like it was sort of gradually looming closer. The conversations were getting more and more outlandish and like, you'd hear older kids sort of talking about how like, oh yeah, no, I've had it. And you'd hear like, oh my God, was it good? And they would say that, oh, it was amazing. It felt so good and all that sort of stuff. And then, because you're a kid sort of hearing that stuff, it kind of goes into your brain. But when it actually came to the time when you were like 16 or something, and it actually happened, you were expecting like fireworks and like this huge thing, and then eventually it just kind of happened, and it really didn't meet my expectation because I was like lying there like, oh, all right then, do you want to maybe go get some food? You didn't know how to move on from that. Like it was just kind of completely went against everything that you had been promised by all of these like sixth formers and year 11s and stuff.
I do also remember, at least in high school, that people would say like it changes you so much, and that also kind of puts a lot of pressure, especially because if you think about when you're 15, 16, etc., you're kind of really hoping for that moment when you'll become an adult and you're so grown up and mature. So that also, I don't know, I remember that being a big thing when I was younger.
Going off what Filipa just said, the expectation of being changed or being different after having sex for the very first time is something that I really resonate with, because I did feel a change, but not the one that I was sort of led to believe would happen, that everything would be different and sparkly and that much better. I felt a bit sad and empty, like I wasn't really the same person I was before the sex, which I now realise and have since identified and blamed upon the concept of virginity and the whole losing your virginity as a phrase, because that was so ingrained to me during my teenage years and school as well. It's something you hear frequently throughout the halls, and I didn't realise how much of a loss of sense of self I would feel afterwards. And it took me a long time to realise that this wasn't actually about me. It was about how I'd been conditioned by the media, by my peers, by whoever, that I would be lesser than for having this sex. Whereas we've seen in media and in other conversations that sometimes men on the opposite side of the coin are actually praised and lauded and applauded for having sex for the very first time. Whereas I feel personally that oftentimes young girls are meant to feel a sort of shame and embarrassment about it, which was certainly my case personally.
Yeah, the thing I wanted to add in here was about, when you are that age, certainly when I was at school, everyone was saying that they were doing it. They might not necessarily have actually been doing it. And I think as well, the idea of the reality of that being romanticized somehow, and that everyone knows exactly what they're doing. Everyone knows exactly how to do it, and that it's not going to be awkward, and that there might be soft lighting and all that sort of thing. And it's, I don't think that's the reality. And I think it's the same as everything else, that you have to learn how to do these things. And so it's not necessarily going to be good, and that's all right, because it's a learning process, but it should be a safe environment for people to do that. And I think porn doesn't help give expectations of what sex can be and should be. And so yeah, I think it's all right if it's awkward, it's all right if it's not great, but it should always be, people should always feel safe in that environment.
On that note too, like intimacy and communication do help a lot to make it better. And that's something that perhaps people, when they're young and first starting and have these expectations that it should be something that kind of comes off naturally and you just know exactly what you're doing, doesn't really help. And that's potentially why Megan had such a, I don't want to say disappointing, but potentially disappointing experience. It's because you think it will just come off naturally, but actually it takes a lot more. It takes being able to be intimate with someone, and also not necessarily confident, but communicate throughout the entire activity.
I think that's also something that schools have a lot to answer for, and the education system as well, because in my recent experience, sex education in school is very ticking boxes. Right, you know what a period is, you know what basic vaginal intercourse is, and that's your lot, and that's all you really get taught, and that's it. Conversations and topics like communication is something that's never even discussed, because schools don't really want to be thinking about the intricacies and the nitty-gritty bits. But if you were to tell young teenagers that it's all right to ask for things and communicate and say, actually, I don't like this, or I do like this, or how about not that, let's try it this other way. Because it took me a long time to realize that actually I'm a player in this game. I have a voice I can use to say, oh, actually, let's do it this other way. We can help children younger learn that faster. I think we would avoid a lot of the issues and problems that arise with consent and certain things around that area as time goes on.
Charlotte, I just wanted to pick up on what you were saying, that certainly until probably very recently, we only really get taught about heterosexual sex. We don't get told about other types of sex and all that sort of stuff. And I think there are many other different things that can happen, and people go into that and not really know what they're doing.
I think also something that is like integral to keep in mind when it comes to teaching about sexual education and stuff in schools was that I remember actually not even being taught about sexual intercourse. So I actually went to a Christian primary school, and I don't remember doing it very much in secondary school either. But when I was in primary school, we were just taught, okay, you're going to get a period, here's a pad, good luck. Like, that's all I was taught, that's all I remember. We never even sort of branched the topic of intercourse. It was almost like it was a taboo thing. But you see, the thing that I think is so like a positive about the time that we're in now is that there are so many more pieces of sex positive media and like sex positive things online, like for the consumption of younger people, that they're not just going to get all of their quote unquote education from pornography or anything. They're going to see TV shows that kind of make it look normal and awkward. You've got like the British TV show Sex Education on Netflix. You've even got Big Mouth, which is like an animated TV show which is all about like middle schoolers in America getting to grips with their own body. And yeah, it can make some people uncomfortable, but it's just because it's such like a different subject and such a different genre that people aren't used to. And it's very accurate, it's awkward, it's gross at times. And I feel like the age that we have now, with more sex positive media, more sex positive influencers, especially like more influence and like attention given to the fact that things are just like heteronormative, and the fact that we're trying to change that is just so important.
On the note of sex education, I think I lived in America for 8 years, and I received my first bit of sex education over there, and it was in a Catholic school. So it was abstinence I was taught, which is, I always find quite ironic, because schools that teach abstinence, as is mentioned in sex education this season, have higher rates of teenage pregnancy than schools who teach a healthy and wide range of sex education and offer information about contraceptions and things. But something that's quite funny, and I do like telling people, is that I was taught my sex education in America at this Catholic school by my boyfriend's mother at the time. So that was a very fun 2-hour class of putting condoms on bananas in front of her. And then I had to go over to her son's house afterwards. So that was quite a horrific memory. I won't live down for a very long time, but I just thought I'd share that.
That is quite funny. And I do not want to make it sound like we're trying to promote sex education, like we're doing advertising for them, but it is a really good show and it does bring up a lot of those conversations. And whilst we're on an international kind of conversation about what sex education is like in different countries, I actually, in Portugal, there is absolutely nothing, like there is not even abstinence. You just don't talk about it at all. And I remember so vividly when we learned about like the reproductory system, like boys and girls were put into different classrooms and that was it. So I didn't actually even learn about anything from, male biology at all.
Actually, I do have one. I've had very terrible luck in these things. Not that same boyfriend, different boyfriend. When I then moved back to England, and it was that time in secondary school that Megan said everyone's talking about it, everyone's saying they're doing it, and it got to the point where I was like, okay, this is happening, it's happening. And I was at my boyfriend's house at the time, getting started, and I knocked my head on his bed frame and I knocked myself out. So it didn't happen then because I was unconscious on his floor, and his mother had to come and help me. So that was another low point. I really don't have the best luck, clearly. I don't know how I'm still here today, but that was equally mortifying.
Weirdly related to your banana and condom story, Charlotte, I also have an example of a stupid story. And it's actually about how my mum found out that I was having sex. So I was 16. I'd just come back from running a festival with my boyfriend, and I dumped my hodl on the living room floor. I'd gone upstairs to go shower, like all the dirt and grime off of me. I came down and I found my hodl slightly open. Now, as a teenager, you're going to be a little bit secretive about what you got in your bag, but this time I actually had a reason to be. I looked in and I found my little pink wash bag that had been opened, and my packet of condoms was missing. And I was like, oh my God, where are they? Where have they gone? And then I hear my little sister, Molly is her name, go up to my mum and say, Mummy, can you blow up these balloons? I wish I was kidding. I absolutely wish. And I just hear my mum slowly turn around because I can hear like the heel of her boots like turn on the wood floor. And I run into the kitchen and no, it's not balloons. I had a moment of hope where I was like, oh, maybe she did find balloons. Maybe they managed to get to my bag. No, it was a 6-pack of Durex. And I was like, oh, Jesus, okay. So then she asked me what this was. And I was like, well, what do you think it is? And she was like, you know what I mean? I'm like, no, I don't know what you want me to say. And she asked me if I was having sex, and I said yes. And she was about to get very angry at me, and then I responded, but at least I'm having it safely. Look, you're holding condoms.
It's so funny, isn't it? Like in terms of having conversations about sex when you're younger and stuff, and it's like it seems so embarrassing, and obviously it is when you're talking about parents, but like I wonder if there's something to that about how embarrassing it is, and it's definitely like certainly worse in it's like a British prudish thing, that nobody wants to talk about it. But I wonder if that is slowly changing. But I wonder sometimes in terms of when we're talking about consent, that like wouldn't it be great if we could just talk openly about it? Because I think it would make the idea of seeking consent and actually engaging in sex so much more open and free, so people can talk about when it goes wrong or when it is not very good. Wouldn't it be good if it was a bit less embarrassing?
Yeah, definitely. The entire stigma around sex then kind of ends up having really bad repercussions, like the one Megan could not know about condoms, say, and that would be a problem. And the same thing with consent. People end up not talking about it and not even understanding what it actually is, what it entails, or know like good tips on how to get it or how to make it less awkward. Those kind of conversations would be so beneficial for so many people, and we end up not having them because there's this stigma around this entire topic.
I think that can actually be traced back to pornography in a sense, because when teenagers and younger people are consuming pornography, there's never ever, well, for the vast majority of the time, the moment where the man asks to take off the woman's shirt, or he asks to kiss her, whatever, or touch this. And if there was pornography that was exhibiting healthy communication and consent, which needs to be enthusiastic, verbal, and continuous, if that was shown through good pornography, if there can be such a thing, that's a bit of an oxymoron, that might actually change things. But the fact that a vast majority of porn is aggressive and violent and actually does aspects of sexuality like the BDSM community a great deal of disservice, because people who then watch that and consume that misconstrue completely how communication during sex should be. It shouldn't be perfect and you know exactly what to do and exactly what your partner wants, sweep them off their feet and start doing all of the motions. You need to ask them what they like, how they like it, and when would they like to start and stop, because that's, if you don't do that, then the sex won't be good and fun and enjoyable for both parties.
I was literally just about to say that, Charlotte. It's all about like the way it's represented too, and not just pornography, but also TV shows. And like so often you see this couple who just like suddenly start like doing all of this stuff without any communication at all. And I think that's kind of like not how it actually happens oftentimes. So those kind of representation, again, sex education does a great job in having those conversations and kind of showing all the steps of everything and different relationships between people. Yeah, definitely agree with you.
And talking about, like bringing up BDSM and stuff, I feel like in modern times, it's become less taboo and less stigmatized, I think, just because, people on the internet are sort of so open about having these kinds of relationships and stuff, all the power to them. It's lovely to see. But one thing that I think is like really prevalent, unfortunately, is when people sort of try to use BDSM practices and that sort of stuff as a justification for abusive behaviours. And that's something that we've started to see a little bit more, because more people have been more open about their experiences. We're both going to get like the positive of like, yeah, no, this is exactly what I like, this is what gets me off, and like the negative experiences of, hey, this guy used it as an excuse to sort of make my life hell for, like a few months. And he sort of chalked it up to like this thing that I now just can't go near because of him. And I feel like while we've come like a really good way forward in progression and sort of being more open with these things, but you need to sort of ask like, how far can sex education go? Does it just stop at like more conventional sex, the normative sex, or do we also start to talk about things to look out for when you are in a BDSM relationship? How do you know whether it is healthy? How do you know whether it is entirely safe, sane, and consensual? More pieces of media maybe, or like more influences of the scene maybe need to sort of come forward, or like anything kind of like that. There is a show on YouTube that deals with both LGBT relationships and safe BDSM relationships. They are called What's the Safe Word? They are amazing. Their names are Pup Amp and Daddy. His name is Christopher Weston in real life. They are incredibly sex positive. They don't shame anyone. They explore different kinks. They explore what to look for, what not to look for, what to avoid, what's a red flag. They do like these silly little wish hauls of wish sex toys and stuff, and say, hey, if you're going to do this safely, don't order it from this site. So pieces of media and media consumption like that would be so helpful in hopefully like preventing or like drawing awareness to these kinds of relationships that are preying upon the people in this BDSM community.
I just wondered if I could come in here as well, talking about the idea that there is so much emphasis on sex with other people, and I don't think we are yet talking about sex with yourself. And like, I think that is a real great way of exploring what it is you like, what it is you don't like. And it also encourages certainly women and femmes and things like that to put their own pleasure first, I think, because we live in a society that primarily through porn and things like that doesn't. And so, yeah, I think we're getting a bit less prudish about talking about stuff like that. And I think that's a good thing, really.
Okay, so we mentioned about sort of sex education within primary school, secondary school, and perhaps expectations and experiences that people have had Now, obviously, sort of years on, when sort of in like a university setting at the moment, how do you all feel about how sex is represented within university? What kind of things are out there in terms of support? How do you think sort of preconceptions have maybe changed? How would you say things have sort of transitioned as people have come to university?
Well, I mean, it's kind of similar to the secondary school sex first time experience thing, you know? You hear all these people talking about university and how, again, it's portrayed in media as being like this place where all you do is just like have sex, everyone's having sex with each other, you know? People can't take their hands off each other. But then you actually go to university and then suddenly it's like, where are all the people having sex? I must say, like, in like the first term of the first year, I would be so lucky as to meet any of like my corridor mates, let alone have like wild hookups, you know? The first time that I met any of my corridor mates, he was my next door neighbor who is actually now my boyfriend. So I don't know how I managed to do that one. He met me when I had a face mask on, I had star footy pajamas on, and I was getting ready for my first lecture on a Monday morning. I don't think it was exactly the sexual haven that people made it out to be. Again, it's kind of one of those things where you expect these wonderful things and it's like, oh yeah, you know what, I'm going to get so much. And you actually go there and it's like, wow, everyone is just so introverted, myself included. It was one of the things I was actually kind of worried about, you know, coming here. I was like, I'm not into that kind of thing. I don't really want to do that. Like, what if people sort of make me feel like the odd one out? And then, you know, I'm now in my third year. I'm like, yeah, no, I feel like if you come here purposefully with that one idea in mind, you are going to be severely let down, my friend.
I think much like any other aspect of university, you know, the greatest piece of advice I think anyone's ever given me, and I know I hear it all the time, is university is what you make of it. And I think on some level, the same can be said of sex and relationships at university. It is what you make of it. If you want to come here and have an absolutely wild time and meet and get with as many people as you want to, go for it. You can, and you can do it safely and enjoyably, and that's fine and brilliant. Or if you want to find someone you really, really like and get into a relationship. I've had friends who met someone in first year who are now in their fourth years, still with the same person, and they are very happy and content. And I'm in the position to have said I've done both, and it's both are fun, both are enjoyable. And I don't think you should shame anyone for doing one or the other or neither. If you want to go out and have sex with as many people as you want to, I think there are the services at university that can help and guide you to do that very safely. We have the nurses office here that provides emergency contraception and things that I know me and a few of my friends have made use of, as well as Get It, the free condom service. And so I think there is the space to be safe and have a lot of fun if you so choose. But I do agree with Megan that I arrived here thinking that everybody under the sun will just be doing it 24/7, and it took me a while to realize, oh wow, that's not the case, because there is actually other stuff going on. We are here to get degrees, so we are a little bit busy. But then on the flip side of that, if you want to go and do that, you absolutely can, and you feel very safe and looked after, certainly by a health perspective, by the university.
I think as well, like in terms of thinking about you and your relationship with sex, and if you're reflecting with yourself, if you are having sex with people and you're enjoying it, then great. If you're having sex with people and you're not enjoying it, or you're a bit worried about some of the behaviours you've got, then there is also student support and wellbeing, and I'm always up for having a conversation and helping people about with things like that. And if you're not having it but you want to be having it, then just know that there's probably a million other people at uni who are also not doing it, despite what they might be talking about. They always say, don't they, the people who are talking about it the most are usually having it the least. So it's worth thinking about that. But yeah, do come to student support and wellbeing if you want to have a chat about any of that.
So following from what Becky was saying about, you know, there's a lot of support, and there's also a bit of pressure that I think when you come into university, and that pressure and shame kind of builds up, especially if there's this kind of perception that if you're a woman and you're going out, that means you kind of are going out because you want that, you want to have sex and you want to have hookups and whatever. So I do think that adds an extra layer of pressure, the kind of assumption people make when you're out and about. Don't know if anyone has ever felt that, but I know it's something that I've definitely experienced.
I would definitely agree. That's part of the sort of the shock I felt at university nightlife, that by going out to a club, it's assumed that you're going out to hook up, to get with someone, to bring someone home or go to someone's house. And or at least in my experience, if you were to turn someone down for that reason, or for not wanting to do that, there are sometimes not nice repercussions. And that if you're a female presenting person in the club, at least from my experience, your body and your space is usually invaded and viewed as property by all of those other club goers, because it's assumed that you're there for sex and there for hookups and there for bodily reasons. Ergo, your body then becomes sort of the property of the club, and that's how groping and flashing and all of these horrible things happen in clubs, because it's assumed that because you're there, that's what you want. And again, that's where consent comes in, and a lack of consent and a lack of communication and talking about this outside of nightclubs. That's why we need to have that. So having those conversations is extremely important, and I think we have a responsibility to help one another as university students, because like we said previously, we're all in the same boat. We are all wondering if everybody else is having sex, what everyone else is doing, and to be able to talk with people and express those sort of worries and anxieties and realize you're not alone in feeling that apprehension can really put people's minds at ease. And that's why Respect the No as a community action group is not only a society, but just a group of people who can talk and discuss things like this and put your mind at ease when it comes to thinking about sex culture and hookup culture at uni, that you're not alone in feeling a bit uncomfortable or a bit unsure of yourself. So having those conversations with people who are going through the same thing is really important. And Respect the No as a society, as like a peer support group, we offer anonymous and confidential support, which our Chief Wellbeing Officer, Megan, can talk to you about now.
Yeah, so just what Charlotte said. My name is Megan. I'm one of the wellbeing officers. I'm the Chief Wellbeing Officer at Respect the No. So I'm one of the people that you will speak to if you reach out to us, either anonymously or, with your full contact details. We're always happy to help you go through the correct channels as a way to get either support, whether it be like medical advice or support on how to handle something that happened to you, like emotionally, psychologically, maybe even physically. Or if you do want to go through the reporting process, we will make sure that, you have the support that you need, you have all of the items that you need, and if it did happen on campus and you do want to report it via security, that someone will come with you and sit with you in the room while you make out your report. We are so strong on peer support. We just want to make sure that everyone has a group that they know that they can go to, that they can talk to. It's like a completely supportive environment that we want to create for you guys. So if you do want to contact us, we do have an Instagram page, which is most likely the quickest way to get in contact with us. So our Instagram handle is UKC Respect the No. That is UKC Respect the No. And if you go onto that page, you can send us a message. Someone will answer you. If you also look on our page, we have a Beacons link that has all of the links to an anonymous message board in which you can confess things anonymously. Say, for instance, if something happened to you but you don't want anyone to know that, like, who you are, that's completely fine. Someone will have a look at that as well.
So that's a really good way to get in touch with people with whom we can talk to. And also social media can also be quite fruitful in terms of having these conversations and getting the conversation going and putting messages out there for people when they feel like they either did something wrong, or I'm thinking about, for instance, sending nudes and consent when it comes to that. You can find really, obviously be careful with not everything you see on Instagram and social media is true or even the best advice, but it's a good way to get messages circulating. So for instance, part of my campaign with Becky, Consent Get It Full Stop, that's the name of our campaign, is making sure there are sex positive messages out there for students that are student friendly and do kind of emphasize that first of all, consent is important in all kinds of sexual activities. And it actually goes beyond sex, to be honest. But also that there is a huge range of support available, both peer support, and that's what Respect the No is here for, peer support and events and, just meeting people with similar interests, but also the professional support that Student Support Wellbeing offer, mainly through Becky. Part of this is also putting together some events later on in the year to make sure that people can come and talk to us and have these conversations without feeling any shame.
So in terms of seeking support from Student Support and Wellbeing, as Filipa said, there is the peer aspect from Respect the No, but then there's me too. So working within Student Support and Wellbeing, I have lots of links with people in the university. So We have a counselling team. We also have really good links with the local rape crisis centre. So if something has gone wrong, or you are in a situation where you need to seek support, then come and speak to us. And I can also talk you through reporting options as well if something has gone wrong and that's something that you want to formalise.
And, you know, a message I would really like to get across here is that if there is no shame in not knowing when it comes to sex, when it comes to healthy relationships, when it comes to consent. And like, really, there isn't asking people questions and asking your peers, asking professionals. There's absolutely no shame. And we've actually created this really concise and straightforward page for all students at the University of Kent, where they can just see and read about how they can get consent and ensure they have it in a very like straightforward way that kind of makes it less awkward, perhaps even sexy. We hope it kind of does make it sexy, because I do think it is. And making sure your partner is enjoying what you're doing and so on is sexy. So we've put together this really concise page with not too much information, because there isn't that much to it, but that will help people have these conversations and also get some information that they wouldn't otherwise. So if you look up consent, get it, full stop, it should show up within the University of Kent's website. And also report and support, which is our new tool, has loads of information on sexual assault, harassment, sexual misconduct, and also how to get support and how to report if should anything ever happen to you. Once you report, you can either do it anonymously or you can make a name report. And if you do name yourself and you identify yourself, then you will get the support needed. And Becky will get in touch with you and ask you if you want to meet up for a chat, and she will talk you through your options and all that. So it's a very useful tool, because not only it has information on the different kinds of incidents, but it also has information on external support, internal support, and also it's a great way to stay in touch with us and keep up to date to our campaign and everything that we're planning for you. Because what the university really wants is we want to ensure that you know what the procedures are, the expectations and the actions the university takes. Also, we want to be quite transparent with students about the approach and the way we respond to sexual assault and harassment. And we also want you to really know how to get support, what is out there for you, and all that kind of information. So we're really trying to make it as transparent as possible for our students. So that's consent, get it, full stop.
So thank you very much, everyone, for coming onto the podcast to talk about a wide range of different topics. And hopefully people have found it useful, whatever situation you might be going through. And if you do need support of any kind, then the Student Support and Wellbeing Services and the Respect the No are also two key things that you can use in order to seek support and help with that. Thank you, everyone, for coming on.
No, thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. The only thing that I could sort of mention is that we're always here 24/7. If you need us, feel free to message us. Someone will always answer.
And also, if you see something, say something. That's a key message to put up there. Don't be a bystander. Make sure you do stand up for people and your mates if they're going through anything, or if you see any situations that are wrong. We all have to do our bit.
Unfortunately, that's all we have time for on this episode of Kent Voices. This podcast was brought to you by Student Services at the University of Kent. For more information, visit www.kent.ac.uk/student services.